Yeah, man. This one right here might be one for the books. Books. As in famous.
Why?
You said why?
Yeah.
Oh, the story for the books. You know what I'm saying?
People would read it.
Yeah.
Torrey Moore was 31, living a normal-looking life in Silver Spring. But what no one around him knew was that just steps away from a busy convenience store, something had already gone terribly wrong inside his apartment.
Jesus Christ. Mike, you think a female? Yeah, it's a female. Wonder if that was Mom.
He had been warned before, banned from the same store. Yet he kept coming back, like nothing applied to him. And on December 8th, 2022, he walked in again. Calm, quiet, and holding nothing but a simple intention to buy a drink. At around 3 p.m., the store felt completely normal. No rush, no tension, just another routine afternoon. Moore picked up a bottle of iced tea and stepped up to the counter. What happened in the next few seconds started as a small argument, but it would uncover a crime far worse than anyone inside that store could have imagined. As the situation intensified, Moore did not step back. Instead, he stayed engaged in the confrontation. The argument became more aggressive, and within seconds, it crossed a line. Moore reached into his vest and pulled out a handgun. Without hesitation, he fired at Wandamu. The first shots struck the clerk, and he fell to the ground. Instead of stopping, Moore moved closer and fired multiple additional rounds. The attack was fast, direct, and completely controlled. There was no sign of panic or confusion in his actions. After the shooting, Moore did something that shocked investigators later. He did not run. He did not rush. He simply picked up his iced tea and walked out of the store as if nothing had happened. The entire incident lasted only moments, but it left the store in chaos. Emergency responders were called immediately, but Wandamu was pronounced dead at the scene. He had suffered multiple gunshot wounds, and the injuries were too severe for any chance of survival. What had started as a simple argument had turned into a fatal shooting within seconds. At this stage, the case already appeared serious, but it was still seen as a single act of violence. That perception would change completely within hours.
Can I give you his description while it's still in my head?
Yes, go ahead.
He had on khaki pants, a blue shirt with a blue do-rag covering his head with a gray hat, with a blue hoodie, and then a tan coat. He walked from the gas station over across the street. He's barely breathing, but he's been shot in his chest twice. He's been shot in the heart area. I don't think.
Okay, give me 1 moment, okay? What is your name? How many minutes ago did this happen?
This as soon as I called you, probably a minute.
Is there only one person that's shot?
There's only one person that's shot.
Okay, and the suspect was walking away?
He walked away. He walked into the enclave apartments across the street, so I don't know where he went from there.
Okay, 1 moment. The person who's bleeding, is there something you can grab, like a towel or something, to put pressure on the wounds?
He is dead.
So he's beyond help?
He is dead.
After leaving the store, Moore did not disappear into a distant area. Surveillance footage showed that he walked directly across the street to his apartment complex, known as the Enclave Apartments. He moved at a normal pace, not trying to hide or avoid attention.
Where is he? You going to
Investigators quickly reviewed footage from nearby cameras and tracked his movement. The timeline was clear. Within minutes of the shooting, Moore had already entered the apartment building. This detail became critical because it gave police a strong lead on his location. Officers from the Montgomery County Police Department began focusing on the apartment complex almost immediately. Based on the evidence and witness information, they identified Moore as the suspect and moved quickly to secure a warrant. What they expected to find was a suspect connected to a shooting. What they actually found inside the apartment changed the entire direction of the case. When police entered Moore's apartment, they immediately noticed something unusual about the environment. The space was cluttered and poorly maintained, but more importantly, there was a strong and overwhelming odor. As officers searched the apartment, they followed the source of the smell into another room. There, they discovered a body. It was in an advanced state of decomposition, making identification difficult at first.
Could this be Mom? FYI, I'm hot, obviously, but could this be Mom?
Yeah. I don't know.
No
one else was supposed to be in this apartment.
Did anyone search him?
I have not. To my knowledge, he has not been searched. If we just want to check the
They
pockets.
searched me.
I know, we get it. We do it like 5 times, brother. It's just procedure.
Hold up, my phone. I need to text my mother and send her some messages.
Yes, sir.
Where do you think it is, sir? Huh? The phone? I think it was. I saw a button.
Okay, we'll make sure it makes sense.
Yeah, they'll bring it.
Maybe that's not Mom. I really thought that was Mom. I was shocked when he's like, "Can I text Mom?" I mean, I guess. I figured it was his mom.
Wow.
The leasing office said no one else was supposed to be in here. It was just.
I mean, did you see her? Would you two agree? I think it looks like a woman.
I believe so.
The condition of the remains indicated that the body had been there for a significant amount of time. This was not a recent incident. The discovery instantly raised serious questions about what had been happening inside the apartment long before the shooting at the store. At this point, investigators were no longer dealing with a single homicide. They were now looking at a situation that involved multiple potential victims and a timeline that extended weeks back. Moore told detectives that the person found inside the apartment was someone he had been in a relationship with. He also stated that she had been pregnant at the time of her death. This information added another layer of seriousness to the case. The female victim was later identified as Denise Middleton, 26 years old. She was 8.5 months pregnant. The unborn child she was carrying had already been named Ezekiel. This detail made the case even more disturbing. It was not just one life lost, but 2. Investigators began reconstructing the timeline of Middleton's last known movements. Surveillance footage from October 9th, 2022, showed Middleton entering the apartment complex with Moore around 7 p.m. The footage captured them in the lobby and then entering the elevator together. That was the last time she was seen alive. Based on the evidence, detectives believed that Moore killed Middleton shortly after they entered the apartment. The autopsy later revealed that she had been shot 7 times, with several of the gunshots entering her back. Approximately 1 hour after entering the building with Middleton, Moore was seen again on surveillance footage. This time, he was alone. He exited the elevator and left the area without her. This sequence of events confirmed that Middleton never left the apartment after that night. The investigation then uncovered what Moore had been doing in the weeks after Middleton's death. Cell phone data showed that he traveled across multiple states for approximately 26 days. He went to places including North Carolina and California during that time. While traveling, his online search history revealed disturbing questions. He searched for phrases like, "How long does it take for a dead body to smell?" and "How to move a dead body without being seen." These searches showed a clear awareness of the situation inside his apartment. After those 26 days, Moore returned to the same apartment. Instead of reporting anything or attempting to address the situation, he continued living there. He stayed in the apartment with Middleton's decomposing body for weeks. This detail became one of the most disturbing aspects of the entire case. It showed not only what had happened, but also how long it had been ignored. Detectives returned to the apartment for a more detailed search after the initial discovery. During this second examination, they found additional evidence that strengthened their understanding of the timeline. Inside the same room where Middleton's body was located, officers found spent shell casings. This confirmed that the shooting had taken place inside the apartment. The physical evidence matched the injuries described in the autopsy. They also located additional firearms within the apartment. This indicated that Moore had access to multiple weapons, not just the one used in the convenience store shooting. The condition of the apartment, combined with the evidence, confirmed that Middleton had been dead for at least 1 month, possibly longer. The lack of heat in the apartment may have slowed decomposition slightly, but it did not change the overall timeline significantly. At this point, investigators had a clear sequence of events. Middleton entered the apartment on October 9th. She was killed shortly after. Moore left, traveled for weeks, and then returned to live in the same space where her body remained. The shooting at the convenience store and the discovery inside the apartment were now clearly connected. What initially appeared to be a sudden act of violence was now part of a much larger and more complex case. Moore's actions on December 8th were no longer seen in isolation. Investigators understood that he had already committed a serious crime weeks earlier. The argument over the iced tea was not the beginning of the story. It was a moment that exposed everything that had been hidden before. The presence of Middleton's body, along with the unborn child, turned the investigation into a multi-victim case. Every piece of evidence pointed to a timeline that began in October and continued through December. Detectives focused on building a complete picture of Moore's movements, actions, and decisions during that period. They analyzed surveillance footage, phone records, and physical evidence from both the store and the apartment. What they found was a pattern of behavior that showed planning, awareness, and a complete disregard for the consequences. On December 11th, detectives sat across from Moore for a formal interrogation. The approach they used was not aggressive. Instead of starting with accusations, they spoke calmly and tried to build a conversation. They commented on his physical condition and how he appeared composed. The tone was controlled and deliberate, designed to lower his guard rather than raise it. Moore responded to this approach and began speaking freely. Very quickly, detectives noticed something unusual. Moore did not speak about the situation as if it were a crime in the normal sense. He spoke about it like it was a sequence of events, almost like a story he was explaining, rather than something he had done. He shifted between topics, discussing ideas, culture, and personal experiences. He mentioned influences, including music and public figures, and connected them to how he saw the world. The detectives allowed him to continue, understanding that the more he talked, the more information they would gather. When the conversation moved to the convenience store incident, Moore presented a clear claim. He said the shooting was self-defense. According to him, there had been ongoing issues between him and employees at that store. He described feeling targeted and claimed that previous encounters had created tension before that day. He said the argument escalated quickly and that he reacted to protect himself when the situation became physical. Detectives did not immediately challenge this claim. Instead, they asked him to explain each step. Moore described the confrontation, the argument, and the moment it turned physical. Surveillance footage already showed key details. Moore had thrown items, the clerk had responded with a metal object, and then Moore pulled out a handgun and fired multiple times. The sequence was clear, but Moore continued to frame it as a reaction rather than an intentional act. After discussing the store shooting, detectives shifted to the second victim. This was the part of the case that carried even more weight. The woman found inside the apartment had been dead for weeks, and the evidence already showed she had been shot multiple times. Moore acknowledged that he had been in a relationship with her. He confirmed that she was pregnant at the time of her death. This detail alone made the situation far more serious. The victim was identified as Denise Middleton, 26 years old. She was approximately 38 weeks pregnant, meaning the unborn child was considered viable and could have survived outside the womb. Detectives began asking about the timeline leading up to her death. Moore described arguments and instability in the relationship. He admitted that there had been a physical confrontation between them in early October. Moore explained that Middleton had been living in difficult conditions before staying with him. He said she had been in a shelter environment and dealing with strict rules and medication requirements. He told her she could stay with him instead. For a period of time, they lived together, but the relationship was unstable. They argued frequently and separated multiple times before reconnecting again. At the time of the incident, Middleton was pregnant with Moore's child. This added pressure to an already unstable situation. According to Moore, they had traveled together shortly before returning to Maryland in early October. The trip did not improve their situation. Arguments continued and tension remained high. When they returned, the situation escalated again. Moore described an argument that took place after they returned to Maryland around October 8th. He said the conflict started over something small, but quickly became physical. He admitted that he pushed Middleton during the argument. Investigators already knew from surveillance footage that on October 9th, Moore was seen pushing her into an elevator inside the apartment building. That footage became one of the most important pieces of evidence. It showed Middleton alive, entering the apartment with Moore. It also showed her body language, which appeared tense and withdrawn. After that moment, she was never seen again. Moore told detectives that after the argument, he left the apartment. He claimed that when he returned, Middleton was already dead. This statement immediately raised questions because it did not align with the physical evidence. There were no signs of anyone else entering or leaving the apartment during that time. There was no indication of another person being involved. The timeline suggested that Moore was the only person present when Middleton died. Detectives continued to press for details. Moore avoided giving a direct admission, but began to describe elements of a struggle. He suggested that Middleton may have had an object in her hand, and implied that there had been some form of confrontation. Even with these statements, he did not fully admit to shooting her. He stayed in a position where he acknowledged events around the incident, but did not clearly take responsibility. While Moore was speaking, forensic evidence was already strengthening the case against him. The shell casings found inside the apartment were linked to the same firearm used in the convenience store shooting. DNA evidence connected Moore directly to those casings. This established that the same weapon had been used in both incidents. It also confirmed that Moore had fired the weapon inside the apartment. The autopsy revealed that Middleton had been shot 7 times, with several wounds entering from behind. This detail contradicted any claim of a simple struggle or defensive reaction. Investigators also confirmed that the unborn child was viable at the time of death. This meant that 2 lives had been lost in that apartment. Moore's phone provided another layer of evidence. Investigators found search queries that were directly related to the situation. These included questions about how long it takes for a body to decompose and how to move a body without being seen. There were also searches related to legal defenses, including how to plead insanity. These searches were not random. They were made after Middleton's death and before Moore returned to the apartment. This digital evidence showed awareness and planning. It indicated that Moore understood the situation and was thinking about how to deal with it, rather than reporting it. After Middleton's death, Moore did not stay in the apartment continuously. Cell phone data showed that he traveled across the country for about 26 days. He went to states including North Carolina and California. During that time, Middleton's body remained inside the apartment. When Moore returned, he continued living there. This detail became one of the most disturbing aspects of the case. A neighbor later reported noticing a strong odor coming from the apartment, but did not realize what it was. Police also stated that they had not received any calls that would have indicated something was wrong inside that unit. As the investigation concluded, Moore was formally charged in connection with both incidents. The case moved to court, where prosecutors presented evidence from surveillance footage, forensic analysis, and digital records. In the case of the convenience store shooting, a jury found Moore guilty of first-degree murder, as well as firearm-related charges. The evidence showed a clear sequence of events and a direct use of a handgun during the incident. In a separate trial, Moore faced charges for the deaths of Middleton and the unborn child. This case carried additional significance because it involved the death of a viable fetus, which had not previously been prosecuted in the same way in that jurisdiction. On November 22, 2024, a jury found Moore guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Denise Middleton and her unborn child. The verdict confirmed that both deaths were treated as separate acts of homicide. This marked the first time in Montgomery County that someone had been convicted for the murder of a viable unborn child. The decision set a precedent and reflected the severity of the case. Moore was also convicted in the earlier case for the murder of Ayalu Wandamu. Together, these convictions established responsibility for 3 separate deaths. During sentencing, the court reviewed the full scope of the case. This included the timeline, the evidence, and the impact on the victims' families. The judge noted that the case raised questions that might never be fully answered. Moore was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms for the murders. In addition, he received an 80-year concurrent sentence for related charges involving firearms and other offenses. Prosecutors stated that Moore would likely not be eligible for parole until he reached his 90s. This effectively meant he would spend the remainder of his life in prison. Throughout the proceedings, Moore did not provide a full explanation for his actions. He did not testify during the trial and did not speak during sentencing. The case left a lasting impact on the community and the families involved. Denise Middleton's family spoke publicly about their loss, emphasizing that they not only lost a daughter, but also a grandchild they would never meet. Ayalu Wandamu was remembered as a hardworking man who had come to the United States to build a better life. His death was described as sudden and senseless. Investigators and prosecutors described the case as one of the most difficult and disturbing they had handled. The combination of multiple victims, the timeline, and the nature of the evidence made it stand out, even among serious cases. The full picture of the events showed how a single moment at a convenience store exposed a much larger situation that had been hidden for weeks. If this case made you think, let me know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more deep stories like this.